So about 3 months ago, I had said this. Now, we still have the Super Bowlings left. We still have the Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. I'm going to make a real concentrated effort, and that means trying not to buy as much outside of the N64 library. I have one big trip coming up, and I think when I get back from that, we are going full steam ahead. And true to my word, I went on that Japan trip, got a big haul of stuff, in particular video games, came back. I made a video on it. You can check it out down below to see some of the stuff I added to my JP set, which I'll be featuring in a future N64 Tour stop. But since then, it's been about quiet when it comes to the N64 Tour collecting. But I have been collecting. So gamers, welcome to the dojo, and let's talk about it. So it was around almost this time last year, about a month out as we enter November right now, December of 2023, right after Christmas, actually, and before the turn of the year, I had decided for my first collection goal and full set to go for the Nintendo 64 library. And actually, the original goal was just to get the entire set, whether it was NA or JP, a mix of both, to just get the full kind of 290 plus games that originally came out in North America. I then expanded that goal to go for both North America and JP to make it even more harder on myself. But I decided that December of last year, and coincidentally, it's the same time I signed up for Whatnot and got addicted to that app. And here we are, nearly 11 plus months later, and we're nearing completion of that NA set as is. So in the last video, a couple months back, I had talked about how I had picked up, well, the Grail of Grails, Clay Fighter's Sculptor's Cut for the N64, and this was by far the biggest tour stop and pickup for this N64 collection. Picked that up at the SoCal Gaming Expo, and since then, we've managed to pick up a couple other Grails in these last couple months. And there's been a mix and myriad of titles that I've just kind of picked up from Whatnot, eBay auctions, and just local shopping. But we're at that point in the collection as we're going into the 20s and then the 10s into now single digits, where a lot of games are a little bit more difficult to find, or they're the harder ones to find in the library, not even because of price, just general finding them in the wild or at stores. They're not the most common titles. So I turned to online for some of these, and even then it was a little bit difficult to find some of these titles. Collection, and now we do, has a little bit of sun fading, as you can see on the cartridge, and they decided to write the name on the top. It is a bit worn, and I'll probably be replacing the back on this game, just to be honest, so I have a cleaner back, because you can easily just replace these are universal. As you can see, it's also kind of worn on the side from a sticker that was removed, but nonetheless, the game itself is Castlevania's Legacy of Darkness. You know what? I think I have the perfect donor game. So this is NASCAR 99. I have it CIB in a pretty rough box. I mean, come on. Look at that. But notably, we did get some deals and snipes in between. Recently, I had picked up Blitz Special Edition. I got this on an eBay auction, and I think I got this for 30 plus under price charting. So was able to snipe this last second on a bid that honestly just didn't have that much attention on it. So caught that one. We also got another title through eBay auctions at a pretty decent rate, about $25 under price charting. Actually, no, this was even more. I think this was $35 under price charting. And this is PGA European Tour. This is one that easily pushes 100, and I think I got this for all said and done after fees, just around 60 something dollars. Again, another big kind of snipe as far as the deal goes. This is one that tends to be more difficult to find. It just isn't as common. It's one of those rarer titles for a golf game. So was really happy about some of those eBay pickups as of late. And then more recently, just a couple weekends ago, I decided to do a little bit of a good old-fashioned game hunt here in the Bay Area. I originally filmed a lot of footage on this, and I ended up actually deleting some of it, unfortunately, so I'll sprinkle in what I do have. But I managed to make a pretty big trip from here in San Francisco out to the East Bay to stop by stores that I like to go to, like the Experience Share in Alameda. Definitely check that out if you haven't been. And then making my way all the way down to Sacramento because we were going out there anyway for a day trip, and getting the opportunity to stop by a little bit further outside of Sac, which is Rockland, and Fire and Ice Games. And this was a day where I already knew going to Fire and Ice, if you've never heard of the store in the NorCal area, Bay Area, wider Bay Area, it is one of the most known stores, not just, in NorCal, but in California and the States in general. It's one of those big popular stores, and for good reason. It's just generally the biggest store I've been to in terms of just pure size. And Ryan at Fire and Ice, shout out to Ryan, the owner of Fire and Ice, who I've met a couple times now, did not disappoint. And in their N64 collection, I've only been there twice, and this is my second time, or selection I should say, is just unlike I think anything I've ever seen in a brick and mortar store. And you're definitely gonna be kind of overwhelmed by just the pure selection they had. There was a lot of titles on my list that I knew I needed, but I kind of came in with a mindset of either I was gonna get a quantity of games, like a lot of games, or I was gonna kind of go all in and go for a big title. Spoiler alert, as you can see, walked away with a big title. That one. It's crazy. There it is. Super Bowling. And that title was no other than Super Bowling. I talked a bit about this after picking it up, but in truth, I was like a zombie by the time I got back. We did a whole day trip, leaving from the morning, coming back around like late at night. By the time I was recording my kind of unboxing of this, it was like 1:30 in the morning. But I did decide to pull the trigger on Super Bowling alongside some other games from Ryan and Fire and Ice and the fine folks there, because this was just in such immaculate condition, and I was really just kind of happy to be able to buy it from a local store and get one of the big top 3 grails that I needed for the N64 collection. Let's go ahead and finally pull that trigger. So these are the 3 games I got. We focused on a lot of quality in this pickup with Super Bowling. Now I want to talk about a couple things to wrap this up. First off, I want to talk a little bit about pricing. I did indeed pay $600 for Super Bowling. That is a pretty penny. No way around it, being transparent. That is expensive to spend on a retro game. It's known as none other than Price Charting. It is a site that many of us use. It gives you a good baseline average of prices for specific items and categories. For example, this game that we're talking about is on average $516 loose, meaning cart only, based on previous eBay or recent eBay sales and listings. And it looks at that and it tries to take keywords like cartridge only, loose, and determine what that on average goes for based on the volume of sales. But here's the thing that's not factored, because if you look at actual live listings right now, you'll see prices that are well beyond $515. $550 for this copy that has some liquid damage on the label, as you can see here. $600 for this copy that seems to be in much more immaculate condition. $520 for this one that is very rough shape in terms of the label. You get the idea. Price charting is a good baseline average, but is not the end all be all. There's a lot of plus minus on both sides depending on things like condition, which is not factored into the price charting price. And this is where physical brick and mortar stores, I think, have that advantage. So yes, I paid beyond PC value for this game, and some people would argue this is more expensive than I should have paid for it. But here's the thing. Whether it's Fire and Ice, whether it's Experience Share, whether it's the Retrofix or any other store, when I go to a brick and mortar store, here's what I'm paying for. I'm paying for the instant gratification of here's money, I'll take game, walk out, good to go. Instant gratification of being able to assess quality and condition on the spot of something. And for good stores, like Fire and Ice, they tested it and showed it working for me in store. Other things I'm paying for are the convenience of selection and just quantity of inventory in one place. I don't have to go shopping for multiple vendors. It's kind of a trust system where it's like one store who I know is legit, don't have to worry about that. And I get to buy all these N64 games. I get to buy the Dreamcast accessories I picked up. I get to buy the TCG stuff that I picked up all in one place. And that's paying for the level of just kind of convenience. Did I pay more Sure. Was it worth it? In my opinion, yes. And then from there, that narrowed the gap further in terms of games and selection of titles that I needed. So I got a couple other games alongside Super Bowling while I was there, just some kind of cheap hockey sports games I needed to kind of cross off the list. And then I knew of another title that I really needed that was kind of one of the final Grail, so to speak. And when I say Grail, I mean like the triple-digit kind of title games in the N64 library. And that was Bomberman 64, The Second Attack. This is a title I've seen numerous times in trade shows and in certain stores, and I just never really pulled the trigger on it early on. And it was one of the final games I needed that was kind of pushing that $200 to $300 range. And it was actually at Fire Nights the day I decided to pull a trigger on Super Bowling. Given that I was already making a big investment in Super Bowling, I decided to kind of, pass on Bomberman at the time. But ultimately, I regretted it. It's one of those things where it's just like I should have just gone it because I was there. It was easy. I could have just got it all at once. And thankfully, the Discord community that I'm a part of came through. The folks and a couple of the people I've met through the Whatnot community have a really cool Discord where we kind of share what people are looking for and what you're in search of. And a lot of them know I'm going for a complete on this N64 collection. And shout out to Deathlord, because one of the members in the Discord community is always looking out for me, was going to a conference out in Texas where he found a couple of the games I needed on my list. But notably, the game that he ended up picking up for me was none other than Bomberman Second Attack, and he got this at just about $200, so $10 off of this because he bundled it with some other stuff. And in comparison to what I've seen it going for online and pricing, fair price. Not to mention he was able to check it out, see the cart in person, all that good stuff. So a huge, huge shout out to just the community behind this. It means a little bit more adding this to my library because it was from somebody in the gaming community. Alongside those titles, he got me titles like Chameleon Twist 2 and Vigilante 8. This one's called Second Offense, or I just call it Vigilante 2. But yeah, had the ability to also add these to the N64 library as well. So with Bomberman being added alongside Super Bowling, we now have the top 5 most valuable N64 games, starting with, of course, Clay Fighters, Super Bowling, Worms Armageddon, Stunt Racer, and then Bomberman 64 are kind of the top 5 big collector's items in terms of value when it comes to this N64 library. I got to get a couple more collector protector cases to throw in my Grail pieces in because I definitely want to protect these kind of top value items for sure. And outside of just pure games in the N64 collection, I've thrown in a couple other things too, because while I've tried to stay focused on finishing the collection, you get a little sidetracked with some additional purchases, but all within the N64 family. So notably, I picked up from my guy Winston on Whatnot, who I've bought a ton of N64 from in the past, a couple CIB or boxes to complete CIB N64, so big boxes like Super Smash Bros, Yoshi's Story, a lot of boxes I just needed or wanted. Again, this collection was never about going for CIB, but over time, if I can find boxes and manuals at good deals, tend to just pick them up. And also, he had a Pikachu N64 that I've been looking to add for the console collection to complete the Pikachu N64 collection, of which I need one more. I need the Japanese orange edition, but I got the light blue edition Pikachu N64 from him as well, so was able to add that to the collection. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of random accessories and consoles at this point on top of just the pure gaming library. If I would just focus on the games, I'm sure I would have been done if I hadn't picked up all these accessories and console variants. But with all that collecting and money spent and decisions pondered over these last couple months, what is the final tally at? We are now, according to CLZ, at 288 N64 titles. And that's not even including the Japanese titles, which I've yet to truthfully log what I have in that set. So that's going to be for, the Encore tour here as it is. 288 titles, leaving us with 8 titles left to complete the North American set. And at this point, it's a very reasonable list. They're small to somewhat medium titles. There's about 2 heavy-ish titles in this list. And the remaining items to finally list off here as far as a North American set go. Let me just get my list running here. The final 8, so to speak, come down to Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, which is one of the heavier $60, $70 titles. It's that yellow card variant. A game I loved as a kid. Remember renting that out a lot. V-Rally 99, which is just like a derby car racer. It's not a crazy expensive title by any means. International Soccer 2000. This is one of those just like medium titles. It's just rare to find. I don't often see it unless like people have a complete set. In the Zone 2000, one of the more expensive like NBA In the Zone games, because I think it was the last In the Zone if I'm not mistaken. But again, still a reasonable like cheaper title. Blitz 2001. So there's 3 Blitz titles. Blitz 2000 Special Edition, which I just recently got, which is the more expensive one. And then Blitz 2001, which kind of just sits in the middle. Snowboard Kids 2. Technically, I had this on my list checked off because I had the JP one originally, but still need to get the NA one. Charlie's Blast Territory, which is just like a medium title game, kind of up there. I think like 40 to 50, maybe a little bit more, give or take. And then last, but certainly not least on this list, is Harvest Moon 64. And I think that, alongside Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, are the 2 most expensive games in this list. So I think I might just have to have a little bit of early holiday shopping spree for myself. And who knows, maybe before December, we'll be finally closing the loop on this collection. And I just want to take a minute to kind of sit back and like think about where I started back in early December of last year, late December of last year, I should say. You see, I'd already been collecting retro games and video games related items prior to that, but the N64 was the first console that, when I got into retro games specifically, like the resurgence of that interest around 2019, 2020, it was the first console that I wanted to get to kind of relive just kind of core nostalgia memories. And that, alongside the PlayStation 2, were 2 consoles that just had so much of a like grasp of my childhood and what I knew to be video games. The N64 in particular was a collecting goal for me to just get the games that I had as a kid. So just a couple of them, titles: GoldenEye, Star Fox, Iggy's Wrecking Ball, Rugrats, The Adventure, like the board game one. And that was my goal. And I slowly picked up those items as I found them. I remember buying my first fantastic N64 because I was in Chicago at the time and they had the Ice Blue 64. I never had the fantastic N64s growing up, and I always wanted one. So I picked one of those up, and I told myself one will be like a stock console, the OG kind of N64 that I had, and then I'd mod the fantastic one. I'd throw in a 3D printed tray to play Japanese titles and whatnot. And when I went back to Japan a couple of years ago to go visit family, I picked up a bunch of Japanese games because they were just much cheaper, and I didn't mind playing like the Japanese variant or version, since like I can comprehend, at least at a basic level, Japanese. So in terms of the playing experience at the time, it was all just about enjoying nostalgic games and getting some titles where I could, but it was never about getting this full library. Like I had never had a goal to get a complete set. And I'd seen a lot of other YouTubers venture off into that, and it just, at the time it was never something that meant enough for me to really dive in. But interestingly enough, like as a gamer, I love the completionist mindset. I love the achievements. I love the stuff that doesn't really matter and like other people who aren't into it won't really care about, but I have a fascination with. So at the time when I was downloading Whatnot back in like December of 2023, right after Christmas, I just wanted to browse the app to kind of see what it was like, because I remember years prior to that joining and checking it out. And I think it was at the time where you had to like load your wallet. You couldn't just buy directly. So like it wasn't for me at the time. And to see how much it had evolved as an app and a platform and community, seeing a lot of fellow content creators talk about it, I figured I'd give it a try. And that addiction quickly got a hold of me. But I saw a lot of people selling retro games, and the access to people all over the world different libraries, different stuff that they were selling. You can kind of get it at deals and auctions and so on and so forth. And that really appealed to me. And I slowly started picking up more N64 games. And then within that first week of being on Whatnot, I told myself, you know what, how fun would it be just to kind of go for a collection? I had no end goal in mind. I had no, like, or I should say date in mind, like as to when I wanted to complete it. I just knew I wanted to get the entire 64 library that came out in North America, but specifically however means or whatever variant. So I could get the Japanese copy of, Bomberman 64 Second Attack, which I actually did. And I told myself, you know what, I'm good. I have the actual game. I can play it. I don't need the North American copy because I already have the Japanese one, and it's significantly cheaper, right? By hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And that's where that collection started. It was just purely out of, I guess, more practicality in just getting games however I can get them. And it was fun just to kind of have the hunt and journey and to kind of focus my collection habits into something that meant a lot more to me. And then it expanded, and I talked to other collectors, talked to other people who had collected complete sets or, watched even content creators. And I get it. Is it the most practical thing in terms of, can I go play Clay Fighters online or emulate it for thousands of dollars yet less? The answer is yes. No question about it. From a practical standpoint, collecting stuff like this, it's something that brings people joy, and it's an interest or a hobby for others, and you can't really knock that, and I wouldn't knock that on anybody at the end of the day. But furthermore, when it comes to just a pure gameplay perspective, like if you just want to play these games, you don't need to go out and spend hundreds or if anything, thousands of dollars on this stuff. There are a lot of better ways and other ways and free ways to go and enjoy this content, and I would 100% recommend that if you just want to play these things, to have the nostalgia to enjoy them again. And there's a ton of other ways to go enjoy it versus going and having to go pay all this money because of collecting and nostalgia, and where the world has brought a lot of these now. Because I can also see that. I can also see, like, it's ridiculous that if you wanted to play Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut on original hardware, you would have to drop absurd amount of money. Doesn't make sense. For me as a collector, I've had a lot of fun expanding this journey into getting the actual sets, both NA and JP. And the reason I decided on JP is because I was born in Japan. I was raised in Japan. Japan means so much to me. And it would be cool to kind of differentiate what a lot of people do and typically go for that NA set and go for a little bit of both. I will say I have a abundance of N64 cartridges at this point. From a pure physical perspective, it is a little unruly, especially when I look at my EverDrive cart that holds all the same amount of games on one single cart. It is kind of crazy just to think about that, but that's aside the point. I've had a lot of fun doing this as a collector, as somebody who's a part of the hobby, as somebody who just enjoys games. And I do plan on playing these. I want to add that. I've been kind of sprinkling in a little bit of it here and there. Another aspiration of mine for this tour is to eventually beat the entire 64 library. There's a couple of people who've gone out and done that. And that sounds crazy, but it also sounded crazy 11 months ago that I said I was going to have all 296 of these games. And here we are, less than a year later, nearly there. So gamers, I know this has been a long-winded tour, a lot to it, a lot of talking, a lot of rambling, but I wanted to give you an update as to where we are in this journey, nearly 11 months since we started. And I can almost but guarantee you that we have all the grails knocked off the list. This remaining 8 is going to come a lot sooner. And my plan is all in one last video to wrap up the North American leg of my N64 tour. Thanks for watching, gamers.